Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Full house for you guys. Trade deadline day. John Pauline, Dylan Mel, Ben Mandel, Corey Jason here, wrapping up this, July, this trade deadline. Guys, before we get into what the trades were, how many trades did we see over this deadline period? And that means pretty much over the last week or so leading up to the deadline. How many trades? Because I feel like there were more trades than there ever was at the deadline.
You couldn't have said it. I couldn't have said it better myself, Corey. That it really did feel like it was just a barrage of trades. I cannot remember, especially in the not even just the 3 wild card, but the 2 wild card team era, just this many teams being content with selling. And I think a big part of that is just because of how top heavy the rest of the league is. Now, I think another part of it is the National League, especially in the National League West, saw a big opening come up. And, they think if they can acquire some big pieces, the Dodgers might be more vulnerable than they'll be maybe over the next 5 years.
But if we had to put a number on how many trades were made, let me hear some guesses.
33.
75.
So Ben says 75. Dylan says 33. John?
I said 37.
37. All right. There were 64 trades.
And that's what, this past week?
More or less, yeah.
Closer.
Yeah, I mean, you guys bugged out when Ben said 75. I'm sure Ben said 75 to be a little facetious, but no, he was right there.
I felt like I was going to be in the ballpark, but I was trying to be a bit facetious, but I did think they lowballed it because, especially if you're going back a week, there were so many deals that were just going under the radar as well.
My first thought was like to say 50, and then I was like, there's no way there was 50.
Like, this isn't minor league trades. These are all major league trades of players that are like going to play. So I have some written down here, and then we'll kind of get really into what our teams did as well. But give me your thoughts on this first one. I think this was probably the biggest trade. The Padres got Mason Miller and JP Sears from the A's. They sent over baseball's number 3 prospect, Leo DeVry, the shortstop. They also sent over their 17th rated prospect, Eduardo Nunez, their number 3 prospect, Braden Nett, and their number 13 prospect, Henry Baez. Now, we knew that Miller's name was kind of being floated around. He was all-world last year. Good, but not great this year. Still surprising to see him get dealt and for the Padres to give up the, 3rd best prospect in all of baseball.
This trade, in all facets to me, is a surprise. It's a surprise to me that the Athletics were listening on Mason Miller. It's a surprise to me that the Padres were willing to pay such a hefty price for an arm that has yet to throw 100 innings in a season. And he was a starter. And they say that they think he could be a starter in the future. So that in and of itself is confusing. But it's Preller in San Diego who takes more risks than anyone. And I mean, hey, people were talking about the Padres as potentially being sellers coming into the trade deadline. They went out and maybe they were the biggest buyers because, Mason Miller and Sears wasn't all that they did. They brought in, I believe, a couple of outfielders as well. The Padres, they were active, and I do think a big part of that is the big blow to the Dodgers. But, right now, things, it just feels weird that the Athletics would give up a guy with such potential like Mason Miller, who is controlled for another 3 years after this? 4 years? Yeah, 20. He's controlled through 29, I think.
I think it's
4 years. So that's just but that's why the ask was so high. And I mean, hey, if I'm the Athletics with the haul that they got back, you're going to end up with 3 major leaguers out of that deal, like solid major leaguers, potentially 1 superstar. And it's also right on track for them to get to the major leagues when you're getting into Vegas. So they are truly saying they do not plan on competing until they go to Vegas.
This was a Godfather offer from the Padres that I think we all kind of will agree that the Athletics had to accept. And I don't think that necessarily means it was a bad trade for the Padres side of things. I think a big thing that we'll notice as a theme is teams were very aggressively building their bullpens. And in terms of age, potential, and control, Mason Miller was the best closer moved. That's why he was the highest demanded price. You look at the Padres bullpen now. Miller, Suarez, Adam, Estrada, Peralta, even as a lefty out there. You look at the starting rotation. Michael King, hopefully he's back for them. Dylan Cease, Pavetta, Yu Darvish. They bring in J.P. Sears. And like Ben mentioned, I think when you talk about the Mason Miller move, you have to talk about the fact that the Padres did push their chips on the table. They brought in Ryan O'Hearn. They brought in Ramon Laureano. Like, this is a team who's, said, we got to pick which side of the fence we're going to be on. Tatis and Machado are playing at fantastic levels. Let's go in. Let's go all in on this season. The Dodgers just suffer an injury to Ohtani. We'll see what the extent of that is. The NL is up for grabs. Teams like the Mets and Phillies, who we are directly competing with, both made improvements before the Miller deal. It's time to put up or shut up. The Padres put up. We'll see how much it becomes worth it. But at the end of the day, you can't look at the roster as it's currently constructed and say they don't have a shot to win the World Series. They are better today than they were yesterday.
Absolutely.
I'm just surprised they got the trade done at all, because I thought the asking price was going to be too high for any team to really even consider. And I mean, the price was, very high. I mean, and number 3 prospect.
I mean, the Padres gave up their 1, 3,
Yeah.
13, and 17, and their 1 was Major League Baseball's number 3 overall.
Yeah. Like it's just crazy, the price. And I didn't think anyone was willing to pay that price, but I guess the Padres, like Dylan said, they put all their chips on the table, and they're in win now mode. Like they
got 3 new guys for their
mode.
lineup.
Yeah.
O'Hearn, Fermin, and Laureano are all going to be everyday players for them.
So I mean, this is basically they're going to win now. So, and then worry about the future later.
The next move I want to talk about that's pretty significant. The Houston Astros brought back fan favorite Carlos Correa, who won't be their shortstop, but will be their third baseman. And they sent over to Minnesota lefty Matt Mikulski. It's nice to see him go back, but then again, it brings back a lot of painful memories for Major League Baseball fans. And, the Astros are right now in a wide open American League, and it just feels like they're back on track to just walk to another World Series berth with this type of move.
I mean, walk is an interesting take, but I think that certainly this move, again, similar to the Padres, like they pushed the chips on the table and said, we can compete this year. Let's do the best we can. Now, they were heavily involved in potentially acquiring Dylan Cease and did not. So when you look at their starting pitching outside of Hunter Brown and Framber Valdez, you do have some questions, and you would like to have 3 or 4 guys in a playoff series. I think the bullpen's fine. They'll obviously be getting Yordan Alvarez back. But, the left side of that infield now is Correa and Jeremy Pena. That's very solid. You brought in Jesus Sanchez as well to play the outfield. They are no joke. And the lineup is going to be very dangerous. The bullpen is good, and you have 2 high-end starting pitchers. That is enough, certainly in the AL, to potentially make a World Series push. The Houston Astros went in on this season.
I think that this is really a can't lose kind of deal for Houston. I think that Minnesota at this point is just happy to get out from underneath that contract. They were happy that, Correa was willing to waive that no trade. And I think for Houston, whatever you get out of them, is a plus. You needed a third baseman when Isaac Paredes went down. He's going to fit in there. And you know what? Maybe this kind of chemistry also sparks other guys that are still there, like an Altuve, who remembers playing with Correa and has a lot of great memories being in the middle infield with him.
I mean, honestly, I think this is a
move.
win. I think this is a win for the Twins too, also, because they only had to eat $30 million of his contract, and so they got out of the contract, and they basically gutted their team, the Twins. I think they traded 11 players on their active roster, so they're really just, I think, going full rebuild mode right now, and dumping that contract is huge, especially when Correa, when they signed him that big contract, then I don't think he's really been producing up to the standards they hoped he would when they signed him. So it's definitely a huge win for them to get him, to trade him away there, and it's a huge win for Houston to get them, because they really need the help there, and they're looking like, Corey said walk to another win there, and I'm almost inclined to say so. I don't know if it's going to be like a cakewalk, but they have an easy path. Path.
What team do you think
hold
most
on. The AL West as a whole improved. Those top three teams all got better today, and we'll talk about, well, not just today, but better post deadline. They all improved. So I don't even think the AL West is a cakewalk for them. And we're going to talk about some other teams, but the Tigers got better, the Yankees got better, the Blue Jays were still a good team. Boston, they can get hot and compete with anybody. I don't think the AL is the cakewalk that we're claiming it to be.
Well,
could the Astros come out? Sure.
I want to ask you, because you said the Yankees got better. Are the Yankees a better team than they were 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Okay, well, we'll get to your delusional.
How long is Judge out?
Okay, well, yeah, if Aaron Judge isn't playing, then sure, they're not better.
That's my thing. That's my whole point.
He's scheduled to come back next
week. He's going to be back on Tuesday.
Is he?
Yes.
They've been very. I have not seen an actual date.
They literally said the day he went on the IL that he'll be back in 10 days, and that the injury has no effect on his hitting. They just wanted him to
because they were very we don't know when he'll be back. We don't know.
No. They didn't.
I think the worst scenario is that the throwing doesn't fix, and then Stanton kind of loses a spot in the lineup, and obviously that wouldn't be good. But we'll talk about the Yankees. I think that they're better positioned to be a actual threat in the playoffs for sure.
Right, but Judge again will be back on Tuesday. They didn't lose him for as long as it seemed. It was kind of more of just giving him a rest. But the next trade I want to talk about, former Seattle Mariner becomes current Seattle Mariner. Eugenio Suarez. Diamondbacks finally move him. What was thought to be one of the crown jewels kind of went under the radar a little bit. I just feel like there are so many reliever trades that Suarez's move didn't make as big of a splash as it seemed like it could be, especially when nobody else was really in on him, it felt. Once the Yankees got McMahon, the markets for the third base kind of went down, and it just wasn't as talked about. The return for that was Tyler Locklear, Seattle's number 9 prospect, Hunter Cranton, the 16th overall, and Juan Burgess, the 17th. So a modest package going back. Definitely not the high-end talent that Arizona was asking for, though.
Yeah, I brought up Seattle just a second ago when we were talking about Houston, and I'm not ready to write them off from winning this division or being a threat to get to the World Series. This team has always had pitching. That's kind of the thing we've talked about with Seattle for a while. They have pitching. They don't have a lineup, but Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, Wu, that's a really good playoff rotation. You have Munoz as your closer. I like Spire. They brought in lefty Caleb Ferguson. They traded for him from the Pirates. That's not nothing. But now when you look at this lineup, Cal Raleigh, potentially with Judge's stint on the IL, could win MVP, could certainly be the home run leader. You traded for Josh Naylor. I know that happened a little while ago, but you did bring in Pop at first base. Eugenio Suarez, you brought in a lot of Pop at third base. You have Julio Rodriguez, who is one of the premier players in the sport. And we know that Randy Arozarena, come playoff time, can be very clutch. This now, to me, feels like a complete lineup to go along with what you could argue is the best pitching staff in the AL come playoff time, most complete.
I like the move. Seattle has just proven time and time again that it's hard to trust them when it really matters. And I really wish they got some players with more playoff experience. And Suarez, who's a good player, I just feel like his second half is going to falter a bit because he's never been able to play at this level for a full 162, in a row. He had a good second half last year.
Even if he falls back a little bit, for Arizona, he was relied on to be their number one source of pop. Here, he's number 2, and on some days it could be 3.
I mean, he was with Naylor in Arizona, so they kind of have that familiarity. Yep. Julio Rodriguez has had a very disappointing season. And then Randy Arozarena as well has never lived up to the hype he had in the postseason with Tampa Bay.
Hype that he had, but obviously on this team, his role is much different to be successful.
And then the next moves, though, I do want to discuss. I kind of want to just leave them out there. We'll discuss them more in depth. Phillies, they brought in Yohan Duran. They sent over their number 4 prospect, Eduardo Tate, the catcher, and the righty McAble, their second overall. We'll talk about them in a little bit. The Yankees, they brought over David Bednar. They sent over their number 8 prospect, Rafael Flores, and Edglin Perez, their 14th, both catchers, plus an unranked catcher and outfielder and Brian Sanchez. We'll discuss them. The Mets brought in Ryan Helsley. St. Louis received the Mets number 8 prospect, Jesus Baez, and their 14th, Nate Dome, along with another pitcher, Frank Elisalt. We'll talk about those guys in a little bit. The Rangers, though, since we're still discussing the AL West, they surprised everybody and brought over Merrill Kelly from Arizona. They sent over pitchers Cole Drake, David Hageman, and Mitch Bratt. I like this move for the Rangers because it doesn't necessarily have them parting with a lot of high-end talent, and it gives them a chance to compete without going all in too much.
Well, it's a great move because pitching's been the strength of this team, and I think Merrill Kelly is like the biggest knock on him was that he's not going to provide top of the rotation stuff, but that's not what the Rangers need. They just want depth. So if, bringing him in is great because now if you lose one, he still slots in as a number 3 or a 4. The Rangers are okay. I think it's a great move. And like you said, you're not giving up too much talent.
Yeah, and the Rangers brought in 2 guys to the bullpen, Maton and Colombi. The AL West, like I mentioned, Houston leads it right now, but both Seattle and Texas are 5 games back, certainly viable as wild card teams. And we just saw it a couple years ago. If the lineup gets hot at the right time for the Rangers, they can make noise in a playoff series. So, and you're a very veteran-led team. I definitely understand being in, getting the season you're getting from DeGrom. You still have Seager. Adolis Garcia and Marcus Semien haven't been great this year, but their timeline still revolves on being in the moment. And you still have a ton of young talent if you're Texas. But I think that the moves that they made weren't too costly, and it's worth seeing if this team can get hot in the second half.
Well, yeah, Seager lately has been at an MVP level. So you do not want to waste it when you go all in on contracts like that. Like Seager and Semien, and then DeGrom right after. Like, you have to win in the earlier windows of those contracts. And if they want another one, it's soon. It's this year, next year is the big window.
The next pitcher I want to talk about on the move is Shane Bieber going from Cleveland to Toronto. Toronto gave up their number 5 prospect, Cal Steven. This was a good move, I think, for Toronto, who my biggest knock has always been I don't trust their pitching. Now, Bieber has been hurt all year, still recovering from injury, but he has a option for next year to be brought back. I believe it's like $16 million. I still don't believe in the Blue Jays, but this was a good move to keep them competitive with high upside and almost no downside.
Yeah, I think anytime you can get an ace is a big move. And the Blue Jays, let's be honest, are lacking an ace. the arms that they have right now are serviceable, but they didn't have a true one. And yeah, Bieber is always dealing with injuries. Get him ready for October. I mean, the rotation has shown that, it's okay, and the lineup can hit their way through. You get that number one guy for October, and all of a sudden, that path for the Astros is a lot more difficult, especially if that path has to go into Canada and through Toronto. Because look, the Blue Jays, they look like they may be able to win 100 games for the first time in their franchise's history.
Yeah, Toronto is a 64-win team at the moment. Bieber and Sir Anthony Dominguez brought in. Not a super eventful deadline, but I think some nice little high upside moves around the edges. If I'm a Blue Jays fan, the only thing that really disappoints me is of all the closers that were on the market and moved, we didn't get any of them, and some teams got 2 of them. And you still have Jeff Hoffman with a 4.76 ERA right now as your guy that you're going to be relying to close out big games against Aaron Judge, against Yordan Alvarez, against potentially Cal Raleigh. Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if Sir Anthony Dominguez becomes the guy.
But even at that, if you're a Blue Jays fan, how thrilled can you be at a deadline where Mason Miller, Johan Duran, Camilo Doval, Bednar, Housley were all moved?
I mean, why don't we ask John how Sir Anthony Dominguez plays in a relief role?
Look, we saw the Mets in 2015. The best reliever they brought in was Addison Reed, and I'm pretty sure that was like a waiver pickup. So anything is possible.
It's possible. I'm just saying, if I'm a Blue Jays fan, with all the closers that were moved and how good my team has been, I would have wanted one of those guys.
The Blue Jays now have the 8th hardest schedule to end the year. So they have an uphill battle to be that 100-win team that they, could possibly be. 8th
hardest is middle of the pack. Come on, man.
I mean, 8th hardest is top 10 hardest in baseball.
There's 30 teams. You're 2 away from being middle of the pack.
I see those goalposts keep moving then.
Come on, man.
I'm just saying, Yankees have the 3rd easiest to end the year.
Okay.
I saw today that the Yankees, in their final 14 games, 10 of them are versus the Orioles and Twins, who might not have enough players to field major league rosters at this point, and it kind of made me chuckle.
I do want to mention that the Orioles made another move. They sent Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano to San Diego for 6 prospects. The Yankees brought in Ryan McMahon to play third base, their first actual third baseman since Josh Donaldson was on the roster. They sent over Griffin Herring, who was their number 8 prospect at that point, and Josh Gross, a pitcher, number 21 in their system. We'll talk about that move in a little bit. Josh Naylor, we mentioned, went from Arizona to Seattle. The Red Sox got Dustin May from the Dodgers, who got James Tibbs III, the Red Sox number 5 prospect. We mentioned him a few weeks ago. He was the return in the Devers trade from San Fran. And then in addition to Tibbs, Zach Earhart went. He was their number 27 prospect. May always dealing with injuries. It's a high upside move that really doesn't hurt the Sox because they wanted to get rid of Devers. If Tibbs is what it costs, that's what it costs. Griffin Jackson, a surprise move, went from Minnesota to Tampa, who...
That was so odd to me. That was so odd to me that Tampa was the buyer.
Taj Bradley was the return, so it was a pitching swap. But guys, what sense does this trade make for Tampa?
What's his control, Jax? Do you know?
I think it's another year. I think he's a free agent after next year. Let me verify.
Griffin Jax. He was a reliever on the Twins. He has 2 years of control after this. So
he's looking at.
He was also demoted to AAA, wasn't he?
I don't think so.
He's been pretty solid this year, from my understanding.
I know he got into a fight with the coaching staff.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was Taj Bradley who was.
He has a 4.5 ERA right now, so I mean, not an amazing season, but I do think he has good potential. And I think maybe the Rays were just like, hey, if we can get him for this, let's see if we could work it out and then flip him for more, probably, because it's the Rays. It
I
just
think
felt like a little
They
bit of a project
always
for
do
them.
this where they sell and buy.
I mean, I
Got
would
it.
have loved Griffin Jax on the Yankees. He was one of my top targets.
You got to look competitive enough if you're the Rays to keep
Yeah.
getting that MLB money that way and not be accused of tanking.
Like the Pirates. Even the A's have perfected the art of not embarrassing themselves to the level the Pirates have.
Hey, man, they could have moved Skeens if they wanted Spencer Jones. That was an option.
That was, and it was really fun looking at a lot of the Twitter fans of the Pirates. Why would the Yankees not trade Jones? That should be the return for Bednar. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. A lot of delusion, and it's really fun because Jones, who isn't a top 100 prospect, kind of is to a lot of people in the industry based on his recent stretch and his past as a top prospect. The Yankees did bring in Camilo Doval from the Giants in a buzzer beater trade. The Mets brought in Tyler Rogers for Jose Budo, Blade Tidwell, their number 10 prospect, and Drew Gilbert, their number 12. They also brought in Cedric Mullins for a few guys. The Reds were buyers and brought in Ke'Bryan Hayes. They sent over Sammy Sephora for their number 9 prospect. And
I love that from the Reds, by the way. I
And
love the
Taylor
Reds being
Rogers.
buyers.
And Taylor Rogers, who was then flipped to the Cubs. I do love the Reds being buyers. The Reds were my pick to win the division. So I'm very happy that at least this far that they at least think they're going to make the playoffs.
Well, I like Hayes as well because his timeline is still fits Ellie, even if it's not this year.
Right. And then the Yankees also traded for Jose Caballero. The interesting point of that is that they were playing the Rays. So in the middle of the game, he had to get pulled and switch dugouts. And then watching him tell Tyler Walls that he got traded, and Walls looked stunned. And then you can see his face change when he heard where he was traded to. It was just very funny. It's very sad a lot of the times when you see the hug watch, guys upset that they're leaving. And then you hear stories coming out of Minneapolis how guys are begging to get moved because they hate how this deadlines went and they all want out.
It's like Byron Buxton, the Will Smith meme, where he's just in the empty room.
Yeah.
Well, and that's Buxton's fault because he said, I will never waive my
Oh,
no
yeah.
trade.
I mean,
So,
he
like,
loves it there.
Yeah.
He's
But,
like, I'll make
anybody
millions
who's
and live
left,
in
that makes me
Minnesota.
thinking, damn.
So again, like we said, there were about 64 trades going back about a week. The Phillies, they got Yohan Duran, Harrison Bader, and Matt Manning. The Mets, they got Gregory Soto, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, and Cedric Mullins. The Yankees got Ryan McMahon, Ahmed Rosario, Austin Slater, Camilo Doval, Jake Bird, David Bednar, and Jose Caballero. Going back to our last episode, the Phillies, who we're going to discuss first and how their trade deadline went, they're 5-4, 61-47 overall. They went 2-1 versus Boston, 2-1 versus the Yankees, 1-2 versus the White Sox, 5-5 in their last 10. They're a half game back of the Mets, and they're 1.5 games up on wild card 2. John, how do we feel about the Phillies deadline and their direction now that we're heading into August?
Well, I feel a lot better that they finally, after I don't know how many years, got a closer.
Oh, let him first.
We'll see how he does, though, in his first
I
outing.
mean,
It's been a curse there.
Because Estevez was an all-star and the best reliever in the American League before he came over to the Phillies last year.
this is true. But I bet it like Duran, I think he's on a different level than Estevez, though. I mean, this is
How do you feel what the Phillies gave up?
honestly, I mean, it's about what I expected. I mean, I said they were going to move Abel last week. I said he was probably going to get moved. I know some people were upset because they gave up their top catching prospect and they gave up Abel, but it's like Abel was basically in a logjam there because of the rotation they have now. He's like behind Painter, and they have Wheeler, Nola, Luzardo, Suarez, Sanchez. I mean, there's just no room for him really. So, and he's MLB ready right now, so it's like it makes sense to trade him. and the catcher he was an A ball, so like he wasn't going to be up for a
He's
while now.
very good though. That's Eduardo Tate.
Eduardo Tate, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so but he's an A ball, so but you never know. Like he's good right now, but like stuff changes, injuries happen, so it's like, and especially for the return, I think is well worth it because it was definitely like their top priority, like their top need. So I thought it was fine.
Ben, now that the Mets need to face this bullpen and these returns, how do you feel as a division mate and a division rival?
I mean, look, you don't love to see guys coming over. I think that, the Twins ended up, I heard that the Twins asking price for Harrison Bader, because apparently the Mets had called in on him as well, was very high. And I felt like the Twins kind of got him, or the Phillies got Bader for a steal. And I think part of that is because of the package that they gave up for Duran. I think the Twins kind of threw them a bone there, especially because they're like, hey, we'll just take what we can get, because no one's going to give that price for Bader. He may be having a career year offensively, but still, even for the Phillies right now, he's going to be a platoon guy who plays against lefties. And seeing him go to the Phillies hurts after, him being a part of that run last year. But I'm not worried about Bader. And look, relievers, you can't think too much about it. You just got to hope that the Phillies are going to Philly.
Look, as a non-biased, no team in the division, I liked what the Phillies did. I thought, obviously, Duran was the big piece. They needed a closer. They got a closer. They got a premier closer. When you think about this team now in big spots in the playoffs, Wheeler, Suarez, Luzardo, Sanchez, all guys that you feel pretty confident in as pitchers. When I still look at the Phillies bullpen, man, I'd love those guys to go 6 innings. Kirkring to Strom to Duran, I feel strong about. Anything else, like I'd love Jordan Romano not to play if I was a Phillies fan. And I would personally, Bader would be an everyday player for me over Max Kepler at this point, and maybe we could pinch hit Kepler against righties in a certain spot, but Bader would become my everyday outfielder personally. I'd play him in center and then Marsh in left, but I think the Phillies were smart, paid a heavy price for Duran, but kind of what we've talked about, why it was such an active deadline is everybody was in, and if you weren't in paying a price, it was going to show in the fans and it was going to show on the field. And that's why I think a lot of teams were ready to sell, because especially the closer market, you were able to charge an arm and a leg. I think that's why starters didn't really get moved. The price for closers kind of made the price on starters impossible. And not even high-level starters like Sandy and other guys. It was arm and leg prices. Yeah, Gallon, Cease, I heard, was arm and leg, where it was like, all right, these teams were just like, let's aggressively build the bullpen, bring in as many arms as those, and deal with what we got at starter. But the Phillies, obviously, they were World Series contenders before the deadline. Hard to argue that they didn't get better after the deadline.
Just to create a little fun between us, I want each of you to individually text me from best to worst out of our 3 teams how they did. Now, not the ranking the teams from best team to worst team, but how they did this deadline in addressing need and getting better. Who did it the best, second best, and then worst. I want it to be private, so there's no discussion until I announce it. And while you guys do that, let's discuss the Mets a little bit. Like I said, the Mets got Soto, Rogers, Helsley, and Mullins. Since the last episode, they are 6-3. They swept the Angels 3 games to zip. They swept the Giants 3 games to nothing, and then got swept by the Padres. They're 62-47, 7-3 in their last 10. Had a 6-0 run with Pablo Sanchez of Backyard Baseball at Citi Field, a wannabe Grimace. They are a half game up on Philly. Ben, how do you feel about how the Mets did and how the Mets direction is going right now?
Is Ben alive? Ben
John, as a division rival, why don't you take your opinion while we finish up this technical difficulties with Ben?
I mean, I wasn't even ready to talk here.
No, my bad, John.
But
I'm good. I'm
yeah,
good.
you're good. You're good. I was like
No.
waiting to see what you said. and then
No,
I was
my
like,
bad. My bad. So, look, I feel good if I'm the Mets because they hit all of their needs. I think that was the most important part, was getting bullpen help, making sure that the bullpen was shored up. They got a couple of lefties, and Helsley's the guy. Like, he's the bridge to get you to Diaz. Him and Garrett are going to be a great punch in the back of the bullpen. I think Rogers and Soto are going to be good situational guys. I'm happy with it. I think the interesting thing for me is that I feel like the highest price they had to pay ended up being for Tyler Rogers, in giving up Jose Buto, who, a lot of teams I think would be chomping at the bit for a guy who's 27, has team control. He's been healthy and, really good numbers, 47 innings, a 3.64 ERA this year. He was good, very good down the stretch last year. He's able to give you length. And then on top of that, Tidwell and Gilbert, who are 10 and 12 in the Mets system. Gilbert, though, is a guy with loads of power and really, really one of those guys that the Mets for the last couple of years have kept as an untouchable prospect. But all in all, I think with what the center field prices were, with what the price for Luis Robert was, Cedric Mullins is a good move. He had a great week this past week. He's able to bump those numbers up, and I think that helped motivate the Mets. I think if you put him in a lineup that is deeper, he's certainly an offensive upgrade from Tyrone Taylor. And at the end of the day, his defense isn't going to kill you. It's really, really just a good deadline there for the Mets, I think. Bullpen was most important. Then it was center field. I didn't care too much about third base because I've really actually enjoyed watching Brett Beatty and Ronnie Mauricio play. And
Somebody clip that.
Swaggy V, Mark Vientos, is going to be back.
Now, Ben, you guys brought in Mullins. Would you have preferred Mullins or Laureano from the Orioles? Because I know a lot of Met fans are a little upset that they went after Mullins and not Laureano, who has a team option for next year and is a little better offensively.
I think the defense is a big part of it. I think the Mets love good defensive players. And, for the Mets, I think, especially in center field, when you have Nimmo and Soto, you can sacrifice a bit of offense, but you're still going to get that pop out of Mullins. I think it's more about the ceiling there. And who knows, depending on what Mullins' price tag is, maybe he is someone the Mets are interested in bringing him back, depending on term. He also is someone I could totally see as being offered and then accepting a qualifying offer. So it's not something that's completely out of the realm here.
He's not eligible for the qualifying offer.
He's not. Okay. Either way, I still think that this isn't a bad move. I didn't necessarily want Laureano. The Mets have seen plenty of Laureano's defense from that series in Atlanta last year. So, look, it's definitely, not ideal. I wanted Luis Robert just because of the ceiling, but at the end of the day, you get Mullins. You worry about this year right now. You don't necessarily have to worry about the term. You're giving up prospects because you're trying to win this year.
I think Mullins is a great fit there, and I would double down with the Mullins over Laureano. And this isn't even like a shade throw, but next to Soto, I'd rather the better defensive center fielder, especially when the Mets lineup, Mullins is going to be a back half of the order guy. Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Vientos, like you have enough at the top. You're not requiring offensive production from him.
And the Mets only have, I think, like 4 home runs out of their center fielders this year, which is like one of the bottom 4 teams in the league. So it's a position that anything offensively is going to be an upgrade. I love Tyrone Taylor as a 4th outfielder and like kind of just like a battery spark kind of guy. But Cedric Mullins is definitely a good fit for this team. And hey, Soto's defense has been pretty good, I think. I have no complaints about Soto's defense this year.
I don't think
He's made
it's
some
terrible.
plays.
I think his range is a little limited, and that's where I like Mullins.
Now, I would have asked John this, but he made it pretty clear that Duran was his favorite move. Ben, out of all the moves the Mets made this deadline, which one in particular is your favorite?
You know, I like all of the bullpen moves, and I really do like the Mullins deal. But at the end of the day, being able to bring in Helsley really is a difference maker in the bullpen, I think. Just because this is a guy who can really let the fastball fly, another big arm in the back of the bullpen. And despite inconsistency, you know, his last 11 appearances over 11 innings, he has a .82 ERA, so just one run. Yeah, you know what? 2 top 30 prospects. Baez is the number 8 prospect in the system. But look, I think that getting a big arm was important, especially because this move felt like it was in response to the Phillies getting Durant.
Now the Yankees, they brought in McMahon, Rosario, Slater, Doval, Bird, Bednar, and Caballero. They brought in the most players out of any team that we're going to discuss in depth today. They are 5-5 since the last episode. 1-2 versus Toronto, 1-2 versus Philly, 3-1 versus Tampa. They're 5-5 in their last 10. With that said, 60-49. So they're keeping, in step with the Mets and the Phillies. They're 3.5 games back of Toronto. They're 3 up on wild card 1, so they still have a little bit of cushion there. Dylan, as you know, my fellow Yankee fan, how do you feel about this deadline and the direction right now?
So I think that the Yankees positioned themselves to compete for a World Series, and that was the big thing that I had going into the deadline. I feel like I'd been talking about it ad nauseum for months, that the team as currently constructed couldn't compete for a World Series. I don't necessarily think they're my favorite to come out of the AL, but they have a shot. And that's more than I could say than 3 weeks ago before moves were made for this team. I do think at its peak, they have the best bullpen in the AL. Will those guys be at their peak? That's to be determined. But Duvall, Weaver, Bednar, Williams, Cruz, who was pitching well, that's 5 really solid arms in the bullpen. Fried and Rodon is a great top of rotation. Luis Heel, by all accounts, has been pretty good in his rehab stints. I talked to you about this. I really wish they would have brought in a Merrill Kelly or Dustin May for the prices that those guys were at. It feels like in a 4th playoff game, Will Warren, Schiffler, Stroman. I'm not happy with any of those options. And then the Yankees finally did something in terms of positional players that I think that they should have done for years now, where it's get actual depth that you could play if you needed to in a spot. Obviously, Ryan McMahon, you mentioned it, first third baseman the team's had since Donaldson. And listen, is he great offensively? No, but he's, believe it or not, better than what they had. And he could play defense. I liked bringing in Ahmed Rosario. I liked Caballero as a steals guy. You give Volpe an off day, you still have speed. Like just little moves around the edges like that, where it's like if something does go wrong, there's proven players on this team rather than having to turn to a Peraza, who was, of course, traded, or a Yorbat Vivas, like guys that really were just holes in the lineup over the last month.
I couldn't agree more. And I think this forces them to actually sit Volpe more than they have, because Caballero isn't just a backup bench guy. He can actually play pretty decently well. So that's a very big positive, because Volpe tends to play better when he is rested.
And some pressure on him to field. I mean, the series that he is coming off of, it was in the last 6 games or last 5 games. He had 5 errors, 6 home runs. I mean, talk about a roller coaster from your shortstop.
I saw somebody equate it to the Jameis Winston of shortstop playing.
Right, and just a little bit of fire underneath them to be like, hey, like if you're not performing, this team's ready to win now, and we're not afraid to sit you. because previously there was no options. Like, what are you going to do? Go to Peraza, who's just an auto out
And Peraza now traded to the Angels for a
like
no-name
nothing.
prospect and some international signing money. And we know how much Brian Cashman loves his international pool money. Yankees tend to do very well in that regard. That was a good move, good for Peraza. Same with sending Pereira over for Caballero. Pereira was going to be a Rule 5 type of guy. So instead of letting him go for nothing, we get somebody with 4 years of control who, is tied for the American League lead in steals, something that the Yankees desperately need to get better at.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing with the Yankees, I think, is that this deadline wasn't just for this year. I think they have one guy that they got that's on an expiring contract. Everybody else is here for at least another year. Duvall's here for another 2.5 years. McMahon for another 2.5. Jake Bird from Colorado for 3.5. Caballero for 4.
Bednar's got a year and a half, I believe.
Bednar a year and a half. Rosario is the only expiring contract. So they didn't just go for this year. They built it out for next year to give themselves a much better base to build on.
Yeah, and the window obviously includes next year when Garrett Cole is projected to return to this team. I thought for the prices that we saw players go for, and it's no shade at the move that the Phillies made, but obviously Duran costed an arm and a leg. They would do it again. But I thought that Brian Cashman, for as much crap as Yankees fans give him, did his job very well, wheeled and dealed, and got this team multiple high leverage relievers without giving up one of their top 7 prospects.
Look, I think this is the best trade deadline Brian Cashman has had maybe since that year where the Yankees sold back in I think it was 2016.
Yeah, we laugh, but he's absolutely right.
I just that's what's funny is that the last time he did good when he was selling players.
Well, no, but that was that. But that's the thing. They haven't been sellers since. And the reason is because of that trade deadline. That trade deadline set them up for the next decade in terms of what they were able to acquire, and then further on set out to, trade and then get back. So, just the pieces that the Yankees have acquired over the years because of that trade deadline is still, taking effect. But I mean, in terms of what the Phillies gave up for Duran, I think is strictly the reason why, the Yankees had a better trade deadline in terms of what they were able to get. I think Dombrowski historically will overpay to get guys. He's not afraid to do that and deal his high prospects to get stars. It just has to work out. They're higher risk moves. And for the Yankees' sake, I think the biggest criticism Cashman has gotten over the past few trade deadlines is not buying enough and believing too much in guys that he just had no business believing in the roster. This year was not the case. He said, we need new role players. He went and got new role players. He said, we need another bat that can help support Judge and Stanton in this lineup. He went out and got McMahon, who is a guy who can potentially be a bigger bat in their lineup. This is definitely a lot of upgrades, and I think you got better defensively as well. I think that, the pieces that you brought in allow you to plug in an actual third baseman, multiple guys who have experience playing third base. It gets Jazz Chisholm more comfortable. And, hey, it's never a bad option or bad thing to have more options. And I think that's where the Yankees are at.
Yeah, I know, Corey, you brought up to John and Ben their favorite move, and I don't know if that question's coming for me.
It was going to come because I have my own opinion on that too, but I want to hear yours.
My answer is Duvall. And my answer of Duvall is not just necessarily because of the player, but kind of talking about what Ben just said there, a little bit of what it represented. Cashman wasn't just doing the minimum to appease the fans by getting Bednar. Cashman recognized the bullpen over the last month with, I believe, a 6 ERA was a problem, and went out and got 3 quality arms, 2 of which were closers on their previous team in Bednar and Duvall, and the Yankees have had trouble closing out games. Now you have 4 options. like one of them better work because at this point you have brought in enough guys. And while I don't necessarily believe Duvall will be the closer come playoff time, he very well could be. He throws straight gas, 2.5 years control. And again, it was just that last move right before the buzzer beater of the deadline that made me think, okay, this was a great deadline for the Yankees, not a good one.
I mean, closer by committee is always fine. You don't need to have an established closer. Play the matchups, play who's available. You can put your best reliever in the highest leverage spot. And I think that's what the best teams do now. For me, I kind of explained it earlier. As much as I love the relievers and I'm really happy with what we got, I think the most under the radar move that I really enjoy is the Caballero trade. One, he has killed the Yankees whenever we've played Tampa. So getting him out of there is great. He brings speed, really good defense, and he has a bat that, isn't anything to laugh at. It's better than Peraza. It's better than Vivas. That's a trade that allows us to sit Volpe, as I said earlier, let Volpe get his head right. We don't have to just run him out. We don't have to play Rosario at short, which I was dreading. I think that's a really under-the-radar move, especially with all those years of control for a guy that was going to just get picked in the Rule 5 draft. That's a great Cashman-like move that I think is going to have good return on investment. Now, A little while ago, I did ask you guys to rank and text me privately the best to worst deadline for our three teams. And all three of you guys sent me 3 different lists. Nobody had the same. So, Dylan, I'm going to start with you. You went Phillies as the best, followed by the Yankees, and then the Mets. Can you elaborate?
I think all 3 of our teams had good deadlines. So I want to start there. I ranked the Phillies at the top because I do think they got the best player that any of our teams went after. And all of our teams were going after relief pitching. And I thought Duran, was for this season, was the best player traded, period. And I think if you get the most impactful player at a deadline like that, whether or not the price was worth it, I think for the Phillies who were in World Series contention, it was. I like Bader. Again, I think he could be an everyday outfielder for them, truthfully. So it wasn't a lot of moves for Philadelphia, but I thought they cemented themselves as World Series contenders and finally addressed a major issue at closer, which is why I ranked them the best. And I really had the Yankees and Mets kind of 2A, 2B situation. I thought the Yankees made a little bit more moves, but ultimately I think both of those teams did a really good job at shoring up their bullpen and getting some good, much needed defense in different spots that they needed it.
Now, John, you went Yankees, Phillies, Mets.
Like the Phillies did get, I think, the best player out of all 3 of our teams. And they addressed a huge need that they've had for a whole lot of years. I'm kind of okay on the Harrison Bader trade. Like, I think they could have got a little bit more, but they did get him kind of at a discount a little bit, like Ben was saying. But they were all really close, and the Mets were super close. Like, I almost wanted to put I wanted to put them like at 2-2, like it's like a 2A, 2B thing. I just think the Cedric Mullins thing there, because I think he's like, you want to get a better fielder there with Soto and right field, and I think they get, I think that could have been a little bit better. But I think the Yankees did like the best job with not giving up very much for what they got, and they addressed all their needs and didn't have to give up like an arm and a leg. I mean, they got 2 really, really nice closers, and then all the players they got have like a lot of control left on their have control left after this season. So like, not only is it like trades for this year, it's trades for the coming seasons, like for next year and the year after that. So like, I just thought that's just really good whenever you can get players that have control and you didn't have to give an arm or leg up.
Now, my list would be Yankees, Phillies, Mets as well. And that's because the Yankees got guys with multiple years of control, so it's not expiring contracts. They had a good chunk of contracts that they brought on. The Phillies got the best player out of all 3 of our teams. And then the Mets, I think, by default, go to third. Ben, you're the only one of us that didn't put the Mets last. You went Yankees, Mets, Phillies.
Yeah, I think, look, you guys hit all the points on the Yankees, so I'm not just going to beat this to death. But they have guys under control. They acquired a lot of pieces, and they really remade their roster the way they needed to. I would have liked to see the Mets maybe grab another role player, but it wasn't that important. They have a lot of young guys who are currently making up that bench. Maybe that's why I would want another veteran. But the Mets brought in a good amount of bullpen arms. Half of their bullpen is remade. So I'm okay with that. I think that I'm happy with that. And like Dylan said, I think all of these teams had very good deadlines. And whereas I put the Mets and Phillies as a 2A, 2B kind of situation, I think it's the price that the Phillies had to pay. I think, maybe if they made that move a little bit later, the price for Duran wouldn't have been so high because of the other moves that were made. And you saw what Bednar and Helsley ended up going for. But, it's just a very, very hefty price, especially because of the level of the two prospects. That it's one thing to say, the number that they are. It's another thing to know where Abel is and where what was the catcher's name? Eduardo
Tate.
Yeah. So, that's to know where those guys are. It's a tough eat for me, at least if I were a Phillies fan. You can't think about return though. When you're in the moment, you have to just go all in and try to win. I get it. I just think that the Mets hit their needs and hit them very well. I would have liked to see maybe a starter, but the biggest needs were bullpen and center field. That's exactly what Stearns went out and did. I think the infield is okay. The starting pitching, getting Manaea back, getting Senga back, Montas has been able to at least give them length. It's helped the bullpen out, which has helped them in other games. They've gone out and done what they need to do, and that's why I put them in a 2.
Yeah, I mean the Phillies with Duran was their only trade that had real prospect consequence out of the three teams. And that's a credit to Stearns and Cashman, really, and how they were able to make such great moves without giving up top-end talent. Now, I do kind of want to discuss some individual players and studs and duds because there are some guys that had just an insane week. For me, my stud is Orioles outfielder Tyler O'Neill. In 6 games, 17 at-bats, he had 7 hits, 4 home runs. He's hitting .412 with 10 RBIs and a 1.676 OPS. Then on the flip side, my dud is going to be Pete Alonso of the Mets. I'm sorry, Ben. 6 games, 23 at-bats. He's got 1 hit, a singular RBI. He struck out, I believe, 5 times. He's hitting .043 with a 1.23 OPS. That's bad from a guy that I think is, the heart and soul and the best player or top 2-3 player on the Mets.
It's a tough one for Alonso, but hey, everyone goes through their stretches, and who knows, maybe adding another bat like Mullins helps him out as well.
Who do you guys have as your studs and duds?
So for me, my stud, it's going to be newly acquired Met Cedric Mullins. He was able to have a pretty good week this past week. 1.408 OPS, pair of home runs, 7 RBIs, but he was able to put up 9 hits and 20 at bats for a .450 average. Outstanding, week for him. Right before the trade deadline, help the Orioles maybe get an extra prospect in there, or a higher level prospect maybe than what they were going to get. My dud, it's going to be Oscar Brazaban. And talk about a guy who has just simply imploded after having a very strong start to the year for the Mets. We're just going to look at the 2/3 of an inning that he threw. In the 5th inning against the Padres on Monday, which resulted in him getting demoted to AAA. He's definitely a guy who's just been worn out. He's only charged with 1 earned run in this game, but it's the reason why Frankie Montas ended up being charged with 5. He couldn't get out of a jam. The Mets ended up going from a 5-1 lead to being down 6-5, and ultimately losing that game 7-6 in the ninth inning after Ronnie Mauricio had ended up tying the game in the ninth inning with a home run. But Brazoban has been brutal as of late. His ERA is still under 4, but again, it's because a lot of runs that are coming in end up being charged to someone else because he's inheriting runners, definitely not doing his job.
Yeah, my stud for this week is on the back of one game, but it may be the singular greatest hitting performance we've ever seen. I have Nick Kurtz as my stud, 6 for 6 with 4 home runs and a double, 8 RBIs in that game. And that double could have easily been a home run in another ballpark. He could have had the first ever 5 home run day. Need I say more? I don't think so. My dud, Rafi Devers, maybe a reason that the Giants were selling some pieces at this deadline. In his last 22 plate appearances, just 2 hits for him and 8 strikeouts. So Devers has, anytime that your hit to strikeout ratio is 1-4 in favor of strikeouts, it's been a bad stretch of time for you.
My stud this week, who was thrown around as a possible trade target for the Phillies, Red Sox outfielder Jarren Duran, 11 for 29, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, 379 average, like 455 OBP. I mean, absolutely on a tear. So I feel like if the Phillies were trading for him, they might have had to give up another arm and a leg for him too, alongside with Duran. So, but I mean, I would have loved to have him. Now, home run derby participant for my dud this week, James Wood, 3 for 29, 1 RBI, 18 strikeouts, 103 average. I think maybe the home run derby messed him up. It looks like
Maybe a little.
maybe a little. Maybe
Some guys
MLB
don't
should go
do it.
back to maybe they should go back to the old format. Maybe it wouldn't mess guys' swings up as much.
You would think, but they won't do that.
We can hope.
Now, a series that I want to highlight is Detroit at Philadelphia. I know we talk a lot about the Phillies here, but this is a possible World Series matchup. The Tigers have fallen a little bit. They faltered, but they're still a great team with a guy who I think is a top 5 manager in all of baseball, arguably top 3 in A.J. Hinch. They got Skubal, the best pitcher in the American League, arguably the best pitcher in baseball, up there with Skeens. I still believe in this team. I think the Phillies are a really good team. This is going to be a big test for Yohan Duran. Does he get the Phillies bullpen curse, or does he break the mold? How do the Phillies stack up against one of the best teams in the American League? I'm really
See the walkout. Got to see the walkout in Philadelphia. It's a must.
That's what I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting. Maybe they'll see it when they Phillies play the Orioles, because that's my weekly highlight. So I mean, obviously, I'm sure if you watched the pod before, you know probably why I picked the Orioles at the Phillies.
Yeah, this guy's picking a AAA team versus the Phillies at this point.
I mean, the Orioles are 7 games behind the wild card
and sold half their team.
We're going back to 2018 Orioles, 2019 Orioles, where everybody's just going home run derby on them.
Well, hopefully, I like them, but I would love to see the Phillies go home run derby on them this series.
What other series do we want to highlight?
Yeah, so for me, I want to do Boston and Texas. Boston and Houston. I went to this matchup last year in Fenway, actually, and this year it actually has some implications. The Red Sox have found themselves well over 500 now. They are in the wild card race. Boston is looking to be a playoff team. They just went out and got Dustin May. They went out and bought. So I think that, I'm interested to see where the season goes and how this AL wild card chase ends up playing out.
Yeah, we got some good series. I'll kick it to the NL Central, Reds, Cubs. The Reds were just buyers. Obviously, the Cubs are about a game back of the Brewers at this point in time. So both of these teams vying for the playoffs, vying for the division. We will see how that shakes out. Like I said, excited because the Reds were buyers, but we'll see what the Cubs can do.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of go over who our teams have, and then also I want to throw out there Texas at Seattle. I know that's a really big series, but the Mets host San Fran, and then the Mets also host Cleveland, who should have probably sold more than they did. The Yankees are traveling to Miami before they go on and travel to Texas, the furthest west they have to go to end for the rest of the year. And then we obviously said both Phillies hosting Detroit and then hosting Baltimore. Eventful trade deadline, guys. We'll be back at it. It's going to be August. The dog days of summer are ending. The stretch is here. The postseason push. Hopefully all three of our teams make it. Obviously not all three can go all the way, but we can have a fun matchup between two of our teams.
Are we going to get Mets Phillies again in the divisional round? Maybe
I hope
in the
so.
Wild card round.
I'm praying for it. That would be electric.
That would be pretty fun. Duran trying to close out Lindor, Alonso, and Soto. That's what October was made for.
Sign me up.
But that's going to do it for us. Corey, Jason, John, Pauline, Dylan, Mel, Ben Mandel signing off for the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast.